I imagine like when you're going out to a job site and you're looking at this maximum yield and really kind of getting a sense of what is that product capability, and how often does that kind of vary? So let's say, you know, hey, we're in end of May right now, and we go out to a job site and we spray, and let's say we're getting, you know, 25,000 maximum board feet on that particular job site of what we measured. When's maybe the next time we have to look at that? Because you figure, hey, if we're in this particular climate zone in this area and these temperatures we're having now are probably going to last, you know, another month or two without much change. And so is that, do I then take that 25,000 just say, hey, the rest of my job sites, and so it eliminates me from having to do that? Or is measuring the maximum yield something you want to do in every job site, or when temperatures change?
Yeah, you want to try, and what we try and do as our tech team is, summertime is, as most applicators and owners know, is like your easy street, because everything's warm. You don't have to heat your drums. Substrates are pretty. It's hot. You have colder temperatures. It's like when you start getting into fall, like end of September, October, when stuff starts to cool down, temperatures start to drop. Your freaking humidity levels start to have an effect on moisture content. That's when we start checking in on guys. Hey, are you warming your barrels to where they need to be? Are you bringing your temperatures up? Because that's when a lot of owners, they'll see yield slippage, is because guys will come out of summer and they'll keep spraying the same way they do when it's hot, but temperatures and stuff start to adjust. So that's when we have to start being on top of it and be like, are you doing this, are you doing that? Because we want to keep those yields constant, right? And that's when a lot of guys, we start getting phone calls because owners are like, dude, out of nowhere I've lost 1,500 board feet. And you're like, well, it's 40 degrees cooler outside. There's a wind chill. Like, are you guys doing the winter processing parameters that we recommend? You know, heating the drums hotter, spraying at hotter temperatures, lowering pressures, stuff like that to stay constant. And that's when it is.
So how do we factor in, like, you know, if we're calling this maximum yield as like understanding what the waste is and everything else from, hey, if I'm just going all out one pass and I get a cavity and measure that's my maximum yield, how do I factor that into a winter condition of where, you know, if I'm not preconditioning, then my whole maximum yield is going to be lower, right? And so there are things that we could even be doing as a contractor to go out there and have a higher maximum yield. Is that pretty accurate?
Yeah, like I said, they just have to. You have to take precautions, and that's, like you said, to stay constant. You have to be like we do as a team. We call guys and make sure they're starting to adjust for winter. If a contractor could know those points as well, that we could, you know, instill in them, like, okay, hey, it's September, you know, send out an email or even call our contractors. Hey, it's, you know, starting to temps are starting to go down. It's October, it's fall. Are you checking on your guys? Are you talking to them in a weekly meeting? Hey, we're going into winter and we need to start changing these processing to make sure that we're staying constant. And that's,
yeah, because I could see that, because if you have somebody that our warehouse is sitting at 50 degrees, you take a 50-degree drum out in the field, and if you did nothing to preheat or precondition it,
it's going to take them an hour longer to process to get the drums where they need to be.
Yeah.
So they're going to take longer to start spraying. They're going to take, you know, their yields are going to suffer because.
Yeah. And I can see that even the maximum yield, the big difference between a drum temp being at, you know, 60 degrees versus at 90 degrees, and you're probably going to get a higher maximum yield at that point, which is going to then, you know, help with the sprayers. But I think that's good to understand too, is when you're understanding and looking at these, you know, what's the product capability? It's like, well, what's the product capability, you know, at the proper temperatures, but even the differences between those. So you know, what I'm hearing you say is, like, anytime you start getting the change in the different seasons is probably a good indicator of when you need to at least go back and start looking at what is the maximum.
Yeah.
And is that maybe something that those guys should be doing on a daily basis, or maybe once a month, or just during these temperature changes?
I think, like, when I had my rigs and my companies, like, we did it, you know, we'd have weekly safety meetings, and as summer and winter would start to change, seasons would change, you know, those weekly safety meetings would turn into take on a different take, where we would talk about preparation, like, okay, make sure that our warehouses, we're going in the colder months, make sure the warehouse temperatures are turned up, so our heat controlled boxes where our drums are is 80 degrees instead of 70 degrees, you know. So it's just, we're talking about processing and safety.
Yeah, so it became a safety and efficiency
meeting.
Yes,
exactly. Yeah. So it kind of changes as the seasons change to make sure that the guys are paying attention and doing what they need to do for the company, right? So
yeah.
that's how we did it. You know, like I said, it's as you go into that, those meetings change and kind of evolve into something a little different to make sure that you're pushing those points. So the guys, oh, okay, even if they forget and they get a little complacent because it's been an easy street 3 months through summer, that you're kind of like, okay, guys, this is where we start to care a little bit. Make sure that, like you said, your drums are stored properly, so they're not 50 degrees when you put them in your trailer or your rig. So they're 80 degrees. So by the time you get the job site, maybe they're 70. So you don't have that start time, and like I said, when the drums are hot and everything else, the foam pops and installs correctly as well. So not only is it making sure the yields stay constant, but also the foam stays consistent, so you're not having adjust a lot in the field as well. Because if your drums are cold, you're also having to spray a lot hotter to make sure the foam's doing everything it should. So
now, if you're, I imagine, most contractors are at least taking or understanding their what they're getting as installed yield on a daily basis, and they get those numbers back, and then they say, oh geez, we're right in line. Let's say our installed yield is 21,000 board feet consistently, and then all of a sudden I see a drop down to 17,000. Is that a good maybe indicator of going back as like, hey, our next job we better go do a maximum yield calculation because something is different or off?
Well, hopefully they call our team as well, because I always tell guys, like I give them buffer zones depending on what product they're spraying with. If they're spraying with 108, I always tell the guys, okay, if you start getting around 20, 21, you should be calling me, because we had 22 to 24,000 as where you should be sitting. If you start getting close to 21, something needs to be paid attention to, and that's when they should be calling us. But I always, if you start dropping 1,000 board feet below like our recommended area, we should be having a conversation before you reach 20, before you reach 19, so we can make those smaller adjustments. Because going up 1,000 board feet is very easy. Going up 4,000 board feet takes a lot more, right? There needs to be field supervision and finding out what's going on. So as like 106, we say, if you're reaching 17.5, we should be talking, because you're getting down to that bottom end of our yields for that product. So we should be having a discussion about how to make sure that we get you back up. Like you said, are your barrels stored cold or stuff like that, and figuring it out prior to you going down to where you're very unhappy with the yield.
Because even when you understand that maximum yield versus installed yield and trying to separate those two, there's still stuff like what we talked about of preheating the drums and other things that can affect that maximum yield.